My husband called me a disgrace in front of his entire family and walked out of his sister's wedding reception, leaving me to pay the $4,127 venue bill. As he stormed through the French doors onto the terrace, he shouted loud enough for 200 guests to hear, "A woman from your background should be grateful my family even let you through the door." I stood there in my secondhand dress and smiled quietly, because I already knew what was coming. By Monday morning, my phone had 31 missed calls, and his family's perfect world was collapsing. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're a subscriber, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. A woman from your background should be grateful my family even let you through the door. Vince Dumont delivered these words with surgical precision across the marble floor of the Rosewood Estates Grand Ballroom. His voice carried over the string quartet, cutting through champagne toasts and polite laughter as his entire family turned to watch. The crystal chandelier above us caught the light of his mother's diamonds, casting fractured rainbows across faces frozen in practiced neutrality. His hand was steady as he set down his glass, not a drop of Dom Perignon spilled, before he turned his back on me and walked out. This was his sister Denise's wedding reception. My 32nd birthday was 3 days ago, forgotten entirely in the chaos of wedding preparations I'd somehow become responsible for managing. But I should start at the beginning of that day, when the morning still held the illusion of belonging, and I hadn't yet understood how thoroughly Vince and his family had orchestrated my destruction. I woke at 5 a.m., as I had every morning for the past 18 months since Vince's family trust had vested and transformed him from a charming architect into something unrecognizable. The alarm never woke him anymore. He'd trained himself to sleep through it, knowing I would slip out of bed to begin the ritual our marriage had become. First, the French press coffee his mother Selma had insisted we register for when we got engaged. Beans from a specific roaster in Vermont that cost $40 per pound. Water heated to exactly 200 degrees, never boiled. The Limoges cups from his grandmother's collection, warmed with hot water before pouring because Vince claimed he could taste the difference. Our kitchen was a testament to everything the Dumont family believed mattered. Carrara marble countertops imported from the same quarry Michelangelo used, according to Selma, who'd mentioned it at every dinner party for 2 years. A Le Cornu range in custom navy blue that cost more than my first car. The Sub-Zero refrigerator that could be controlled by an app Vince had never bothered downloading. I moved through this space that never felt like mine, remembering the tiny galley kitchen in our first apartment before the trust money came through. Back then, Vince would wrap his arms around me while I cooked, telling me about the sustainable housing project he was designing for the nonprofit downtown. Back then, he still introduced me as Clarissa, my wife, instead of just Clarissa, with a dismissive wave that let people draw their own conclusions. Now he took his coffee standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, scrolling through emails from his family's real estate development firm while I existed somewhere in his peripheral vision. "Remember, we have Denise's wedding today," he said that morning, my birthday morning 3 days prior, still unacknowledged, without looking up. "Your dress is the navy one. Mother specifically requested nothing that would photograph too prominently. You're in the family portraits, but you'll stand in the back row." Denise's wedding. I'd spent 6 months helping coordinate details because Selma had decided that since I didn't have a real career anyway, I had time to assist the wedding planner. Never mind that I was a freelance grant writer who'd helped secure over $2 million in funding for local nonprofits. That wasn't a real career, in Dumont terms. Real careers came with corner offices and business cards that impressed at country club gatherings. By 7:30 a.m., I was pulling into the parking lot of Harbor Community Center, trading marble and French press coffee for industrial carpeting and coffee that tasted like burnt plastic but was made by people who remembered my name. My office was a shared workspace with 3 other freelancers, a far cry from Vince's mahogany-paneled suite at Dumont Properties. But here, I was Clarissa Parker, not Clarissa Dumont, not Vince's wife from that background. Just Clarissa, the grant writer who could make nonprofit mission statements sing and funding proposals impossible to refuse. My phone buzzed with a text from Denise. "Final headcount is 200. Venue wants final payment today. Can you handle it? Mother says you're good at managing vendors." I stared at that message, parsing what it really meant. The Dumont family had a business account with the Rosewood estate. They'd hosted charity galas there, corporate events, Selma's 60th birthday celebration. But somehow, I was being asked to handle the final payment for Denise's wedding, as if I were staff rather than family. My colleague Monique looked up from her desk across the room. That face means Dumont family drama. What is it this time? They want me to pay for the wedding venue. The wedding that costs more than most people's houses? That wedding? Denise says it's just handling the vendors. I'm sure they'll reimburse me. Monique's expression said everything. Her mouth was too polite to speak. She'd watched me shrink over the past 18 months, watched me transform from the confident woman who'd won a regional writing award into someone who apologized for taking up space. Clarissa, honey. When's the last time Vince did something that was just for you? Not for appearances, not for his family's image, just because you wanted it? I couldn't answer because the truth was too pathetic to speak aloud. Every gesture, every gift, every moment of attention came with strings attached to his family's approval or social positioning. The pearl necklace he'd given me last Christmas was because Selma had commented that my jewelry looked modest at the company gala. The weekend trip to Newport was to attend his cousin's yacht club initiation. Even our anniversary dinner had included his parents and his sister, because Selma thought it was important for family unity. After work, I stopped at home to change for the wedding, choosing the navy dress Vince hadn't pre-approved but Selma had. It was conservative, expensive enough not to embarrass them but not so striking that I'd draw attention in photographs. I stood in front of our bedroom mirror, fastening my grandmother's silver locket, a delicate filigree piece she'd worn every day of her adult life. For my brave girl, I whispered to my reflection, touching the cool metal. She'd worn it through my grandfather's bankruptcy, through the cancer that eventually took her, through decades of being told she wasn't quite good enough for the country club crowd. Wear this when you need to remember who you are, she'd told me on her deathbed. Tonight, walking into the Rosewood estate where the Dumont family would evaluate every aspect of my appearance and find it wanting, I would need all the strength that small silver locket could provide. The drive to the venue took me past the old neighborhood where I'd grown up, modest Cape Cods with chain-link fences and cars that were practical rather than prestigious. My parents still lived there, in the house I'd been raised in, where dinner conversation revolved around PDA meetings and community potlucks rather than stock portfolios and social positioning. Vince had stopped visiting them 6 months ago. Too busy, he said. But I knew the truth. My background had become an embarrassment, evidence that he'd married beneath himself, a choice his family never let him forget. The Rosewood estate rose from its manicured grounds like a wedding cake made of stone and privilege. I handed my keys to a valet, watching him try not to show surprise at my 5-year-old Honda Civic among the Teslas and BMWs. Inside, white roses cascaded from every surface. Crystal votives lined the aisle. The ceiling had been draped in fabric that caught the afternoon light. Selma Dumont stood near the ceremony space, directing staff with military precision. When she saw me, her smile appeared and disappeared so quickly I might have imagined it. Clarissa. You're here. Not hello, not how lovely to see you. Just acknowledgement of my presence like confirming a delivery. The wedding planner needs the final venue payment. I believe Denise texted you. Yes, I can handle that. Good. You're so helpful with these practical matters. She adjusted a rose arrangement, not looking at me. You'll be in the extended family group for photographs. Immediate family will be separate. Of course. 18 months of marriage, and I was still extended family. I found the venue manager, Valeria Eigenman, in her office. She looked up with exhaustion that comes from dealing with demanding clients all day. Mrs. Dumont? We need the final payment before the ceremony begins. I'm Clarissa. I'm handling the payment. I pulled out my credit card, the one I'd been carefully building for 6 months. $4,127 for final venue charges. I signed with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. You'll be reimbursed by the family? Valeria asked gently, as if she'd seen this scenario before. Of course, I said, the lie tasting bitter. She handed me the receipt with sympathy that made my throat tight. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I've worked in this business 20 years. If you need anything, my card is stapled to that receipt. She'd written her personal cell number on the back. The ceremony was flawless, perfect flowers, perfect music, every detail choreographed. I sat in the 7th row, far enough back that I'd barely be visible in photos. Vince sat in the front row next to his parents, never once turning to see where I'd been seated. The reception began with golden light streaming through the ballroom windows. Thousands more flowers, china so delicate you could see light through it. I found my assigned seat, table 17, near the kitchen doors, with Vince's distant relatives who couldn't quite remember my name. Vince sat at table 1 with his parents and the most important family members. I could see him clearly, laughing with confidence, his hand gesturing with ease. He hadn't looked for me once. The first course arrived, lobster bisque with truffle oil. Around me, conversation flowed about vacation homes and private schools. I nodded and smiled, performing pleasant background presence. Between courses, Selma stood to give her speech. She looked radiant in rose silk, diamonds catching candlelight. Family, she began. Today we celebrate not just the union of Denise and David, but the continuation of our legacy. The importance of marrying within your class, of choosing partners who elevate rather than diminish what we've built. Her eyes found me once, holding my gaze just long enough to make her point clear. To those who truly belong, she concluded. To those who carry our standards forward with pride. The room erupted in applause. Vince stood, beaming, pulling his mother into an embrace. Not once did he look toward table 17. That's when I felt it, the shift from humiliation to something colder, sharper. I'd spent 18 months making myself smaller, trying to fit into spaces never meant to include me. But sitting there at table 17, watching my husband applaud a speech that erased my existence, I stopped shrinking. The humiliation at Denise's wedding wasn't the first time. It was just the loudest. 2 months earlier, there had been the country club incident. Selma had insisted I join her for the monthly women's luncheon, a gathering of society wives who spent 3 hours eating salads and discussing charitable foundations they controlled like personal fiefdoms. I'd been seated next to Denise and her friend Valeria. The conversation turned to vacation homes. We're looking at properties in the Berkshires, Denise said, showing photos. David wants something rustic but civilized. Heated floors, wine cellar, the essentials. They turned to me with polite interest. Do you and Vince have a vacation home? Not yet. We're focused on building our savings. The pause was infinitesimal but devastating. Savings. As if the Dumont family trust hadn't made Vince a multimillionaire overnight. How prudent, Selma said smoothly. Clarissa comes from a more modest background. She's still adjusting to having certain resources available. Modest background. Every word chosen to remind me and everyone else that I didn't belong. That afternoon, I'd driven past my parents' house. My father was mowing the lawn, waving at neighbors. My mother was visible through the kitchen window. They'd worked their entire lives, raised 2 children with love and stability, taught us to treat people with dignity. But in Selma's world, their existence could be dismissed as modest background, as if lack of inherited wealth made them lesser humans. 3 months before the wedding, there had been the Sunday dinner at Selma's estate. These weekly gatherings were mandatory. I'd arrived with a homemade apple tart, my grandmother's recipe. Selma accepted it with a tight smile. How homey. I'll have the kitchen staff wrap it for you to take home. We're having creme brulee from that new French pâtisserie. My tart sat untouched on the counter while we ate dessert that cost $40 per serving. During dinner, Spencer was describing a property deal. The tenants are making noise about rent increases. But if they can't afford market rate, they should move somewhere appropriate to their income level. Those are families, I'd said quietly. Single mothers, elderly people. A 15% increase could force them into homelessness. The table went silent. Selma set down her fork with deliberate care. Clarissa, dear, I know you have strong feelings about social issues, but business is business. We can't let sentimentality interfere with sound financial decisions. It's not sentimentality. It's ethics. Vince's hand found my knee under the table, squeezing hard enough to hurt. What my wife means is that we need to consider PR implications. Not that I had a valid point. Just that bad publicity could affect the bottom line. Clarence had laughed. Vince, your wife's bleeding heart is rather charming in its naivety. Reminds me of college students who protest without understanding basic market forces. I'd excused myself to the bathroom and stayed there for 15 minutes, wondering when I'd become someone who needed permission to have opinions. That evening, when I made dinner at home, pot roast and mashed potatoes, nothing fancy, Vince had looked at the food with suspicion. What's this? Dinner. The food I grew up eating. Clarissa, we have reservations at Marchand's. I told you about this last week. You told me. You didn't ask me. His face hardened. Don't be dramatic. If you'd checked the shared calendar, you'd know about these things. I don't want to go to Marchand's. I want to eat this meal I made and talk about our days like we used to. The man you fell in love with didn't have the responsibilities I have now. Didn't have a family business to maintain and a reputation to uphold and a mother who's already disappointed in my choice of wife. Choice of wife. As if I were a purchase he was regretting. Now, sitting at table 17 at Denise's wedding, I recognized these moments for what they were. Not isolated incidents. Not my oversensitivity. A systematic campaign to erase who I was and replace me with who they needed me to be. And I'd been complicit, shrinking smaller and smaller, apologizing for existing, for having the audacity to marry into a family that would spend the rest of my life punishing me for not being born into their tax bracket. But I was done being invisible. 4 months before Denise's wedding, everything shifted. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I'd come home early with a migraine. Vince's Mercedes wasn't in the garage, which made sense because he'd told me he was flying to Chicago for a property development meeting. I was hanging his suits in our closet when the receipt fell from his jacket pocket, drifting to the floor like a leaf that would change everything. Bella notte. The date was yesterday, Monday, when he was supposedly in Chicago. The timestamp showed 9:23 p.m., around the time he'd texted me goodnight, too exhausted to call. The bill was for 2 people. Oysters, champagne, truffle risotto he always said was too pretentious. And tiramisu, which Vince claimed gave him heartburn. My hands trembled as I examined his collar, finding a lipstick mark the color of burgundy wine. Nothing like my nude tones. The perfume clinging to the fabric wasn't mine either, something heavy and floral that made my stomach clench. I photographed everything with my phone, creating a folder labeled Household Receipts. Then I carefully returned the receipt to his pocket, hung the suit exactly as I'd found it, and spent the next hour vomiting in the guest bathroom. When Vince came home that night, he kissed my forehead and asked about my migraine, his lying mouth forming concerned words while I smiled and served dinner. He even complimented the pasta, saying it was perfectly seasoned, unaware that I'd been too nauseous to taste anything. How was Chicago? I asked, my voice steady. Exhausting. The investors wanted to go through every line item. I didn't get back to the hotel until almost midnight. The hotel. Not the restaurant where he'd been eating oysters with someone who wore burgundy lipstick. 2 weeks later, insomnia became my companion. I'd lie beside Vince, listening to his breathing, while my mind raced through possibilities I didn't want to consider. One night at 2:30 a.m., I crept to his home office. The filing cabinet was locked, but I knew where he kept the key, taped under his desk drawer. The prenuptial agreement was in a folder marked Legal Documents, 18 pages I'd signed 3 days before our wedding because Vince said it was just a formality. Reading it by phone light, I discovered clauses I'd never noticed. Most protected Vince's assets. In divorce, I'd receive minimal alimony for 3 years maximum, enough to establish independence, but not maintain our lifestyle. But on page 14, buried in subsection 9c, was a morality clause. Any party found guilty of financial crimes, documented adultery, or actions bringing public disgrace to the marriage would forfeit all protections. Vince's attorney had waved this away during signing, calling it reciprocal protection that never applies to people like us. But now, at 2:30 a.m. with evidence of his affair on my phone and this document in my hands, I realized Vince had inadvertently given me a weapon he never thought I'd need. I photographed every page, then returned everything exactly as I'd found it. The following week, I started noticing details I'd been trained to ignore. Vince's phone went everywhere with him now, even to the bathroom. He'd changed his passcode from our anniversary to something unknown. His calendar had become private. I went to our bank on a Friday afternoon, walking in with the confidence of someone accessing joint accounts. The branch manager, David Eigenman, greeted me professionally. "Mrs. Dumont, how can we help you?" "I need statements for our joint accounts. The last 6 months." Something flickered across his face. "Of course. Though I should mention, Mr. Dumont requested we send statements to his business email only. I'd like copies anyway. For tax preparation." David printed them without further comment, though his expression suggested he'd seen this before. In my car, I spread the statements across the passenger seat. Patterns emerged: monthly charges at Bellinate, recurring charges at the Grandview Hotel where rooms started at $400, jewelry purchases from Cartier that I'd never received, and transfers. Every month, exactly $3,500 moved to an unknown account. The notation simply said, "investment transfer." I photographed every page, my evidence folder growing like a tumor documenting the slow death of my marriage. That weekend at his family dinner, Vince was charming, his hand on my knee during conversation, refilling my water glass. The performance of devoted husband. But his phone buzzed constantly. During dessert, it lit up with a text preview: "Missing you. When can we?" He grabbed it so quickly he knocked over his wine glass, burgundy spreading across Selma's tablecloth like blood. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. That night, I made my decision. I wouldn't confront him. I would watch, document, wait. Build a case so airtight that when the time came, he couldn't rewrite history. The morality clause required proof. So I would give it proof. The nonprofit leadership conference in Portland came 3 weeks later. I almost canceled, but Vince insisted it would be good for me to spend time with my little grant-writing friends. During networking lunch, my colleague Monique introduced me to her sister-in-law Denise. Denise Stoker was everything I wasn't: direct, sharp-edged, with eyes that cataloged every detail. "Monique tells me you work in nonprofit development," Denise said over conference coffee. 8 years now. Grant writing for housing initiatives and community programs. She studied my face with intensity that made me want to check my reflection. "You look exhausted. When's the last time you slept a full night?" The question was so abrupt, so devoid of pleasantries, that I answered honestly. 5 months ago. Monique and Denise exchanged glances. Then Denise pulled out her business card, sliding it across the table. "I'm a forensic accountant. I specialize in divorce cases, helping women understand their financial situations before they make major decisions." She lowered her voice. "Just in case you ever need help understanding your finances. Or anything else." I took the card with trembling fingers, tucking it into my wallet. Denise's eyes met mine with perfect understanding. She knew, without my saying a word, exactly why I hadn't slept in 5 months. "Knowledge is power," she said simply. "And sometimes we need power more than we need to keep pretending everything's fine." Denise's card lived in my wallet for exactly 2 days before I called her. I sat in my car during lunch break and dialed with shaking fingers. "I need help understanding my finances. Can you meet me somewhere private? Coffee shop on Elm Street. Tomorrow at noon. Bring your last 3 months of bank statements if you can access them safely." Safely. The word echoed as I drove home that afternoon, knowing I had 90 minutes before Vince returned. I printed statements from our joint accounts, photographing everything as backup: receipts, credit card bills, investment statements I wasn't supposed to understand. I met Denise at the coffee shop the next day. She took one look at my face and ordered me large coffee with extra sugar without asking. My mother-in-law sent a stylist to fix me for the wedding. Denise's expression hardened. You need to look appropriate for important people. 200 important people. I pulled out the bank statements, spreading them across the table. Vince planned the entire wedding without telling me. I'm somehow responsible for the venue payment. Denise studied the statements, her forensic mind working through patterns. Her finger traced charges. This withdrawal, $3,500 monthly, labeled investment transfer. But look at the date. It matches this credit card charge at the Grandview Hotel. Presidential suite, champagne, room service for two. He never mentioned investing in real estate there. That's because he wasn't. She pulled out her laptop. Let me show you something about financial patterns in affairs. For the next hour, Denise taught me to read my life through numbers. Business expenses aligning with jewelry purchases. Client gifts matching lingerie boutique charges. Monthly transfers to an account funding a parallel life. He's spending approximately $8,000 monthly on someone who isn't you, Denise said quietly. That's more than twice your annual income. The coffee shop felt too hot, too small. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood at the sink, splashing water on my face while understanding finally crystallized. My marriage wasn't failing. It had never existed. I was a prop in Travis's performance. When I returned, Denise had pulled up information about secured credit cards. You need something in only your name. Your credit union can set you up based on your salary alone. Start small. Build credit history separate from his. Document everything. My sister Monique won't be invited to the wedding. Vince says she doesn't fit the image. Denise's hand covered mine. Then your sister is exactly who you need in your corner. The people they exclude are the ones who will help you survive this. There's a morality clause in my prenup. If I can prove adultery or financial impropriety, the agreement becomes void. Denise's eyes lit up. Then we document everything. We build a case so comprehensive his lawyer will recommend settling immediately. What if I'm wrong? Clarissa. Men who have innocent explanations don't hide phone passwords or change bank settings or spend $8,000 monthly on business expenses matching hotel charges. You're not wrong. You're finally paying attention. Denise Stoker's business card became my lifeline. We met twice a week at different coffee shops, always during lunch breaks, always in neighborhoods where Vince's circle wouldn't venture. Look at this pattern, she said during our third meeting, pulling up a spreadsheet. Every Tuesday, there's a charge at Bella Notte between $200 and $350. Every Tuesday for 8 months. That's not random. That's routine. I stared at the numbers, mathematical proof of my husband's affair laid out in columns and rows. And these charges at Cartier, March 15th, $4,200. May 15th, $3,800. July 15th, $5,100. Always the 15th. Always between 3 and 5,000. Denise looked up. Someone has an anniversary he's celebrating. Have you ever received jewelry from Vince on the 15th? No. He gave me a tennis bracelet at Christmas, but only because his mother commented on my modest jewelry. These purchases aren't for you. She pulled up another document. Vince has 2 credit cards you don't know about. Both in his name only, both with balances over $40,000. Hotels, restaurants, luxury purchases. Over the next week, I opened 3 accounts at a credit union across town. A checking account with my grant-writing income. A savings account where I funneled $300 weekly from cash withdrawals, not enough for Vince to notice, but enough to build escape funds. And a secured credit card with a $2,000 limit. Denise taught me to photograph everything. Every receipt, every statement, every text preview on his phone. 2 weeks before Denise's wedding, I was putting away laundry when Vince's laptop chimed. He was in the shower, computer open on the bed. The email preview, can't wait for Tuesday. I bought something special to show you. Love you. V. My hands moved before my brain could intervene. I opened his email, grabbed my phone, and started photographing. 5 minutes before the shower turned off. The emails went back 14 months. Before the trust fund, before the name change, before everything. Vince, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. The bracelet is beautiful. You make me feel like I'm the only woman in the world, even though I know I'm not. Even though you have her. Her. Me. The obstacle in their story. When the shower turned off, I closed the laptop and returned to folding laundry as if I hadn't just documented evidence that would void our prenuptial agreement. That night, Vince announced I needed to handle the final venue payment for his sister's wedding. Around $4,000. You have room on your card, right? I thought of my secret credit card with its $2,000 limit. My regular card has enough space. Good. Mother appreciates you being helpful. She says you're better at handling vendors than Denise. More experience dealing with service people. Service people. Because in their world, I was adjacent to them. After dinner, I texted Denise Stoker. They want me to pay $4,000 plus for the wedding venue. Should I do it? Do it. Document everything. We'll use it. Use it for what? For showing financial abuse. They're making you pay for family events while your husband spends $8,000 monthly on his mistress. The optics are devastating. The next morning, I increased my credit card limit to $5,000. The account representative, Monique Eigenman, processed it without pressing for details. If you need statements sent to a different address, we can arrange that. My office address, please. When I left, I had financial infrastructure Vince knew nothing about. Accounts in my name, credit being built independently, money in spaces he couldn't access. That afternoon, I met my sister Monique at her hospital cafeteria. I'm leaving him. She set down her coffee carefully. When? After the wedding. I'm gathering evidence. There's a forensic accountant helping me. What do you need? A place to stay. And someone to remind me I'm not crazy when he tries to convince everyone I am. The guest room is yours as long as you need it. I had allies now. Evidence. Infrastructure. Everything I needed to walk away with my dignity intact and his prenuptial agreement in shreds. 3 days before Denise's wedding, Vince announced we were having dinner at his mother's estate. Not asked, announced. When I mentioned a client deadline, he simply said, reschedule it. Family comes first. Selma's estate sat on 4 acres of waterfront property. The circular driveway was already crowded with luxury vehicles when we arrived. Inside, the dining room had been set for 10 with china so delicate you could see candlelight through it. Selma greeted us in the foyer, air kissing near my cheeks without making contact. Clarissa, darling. You're here. Then, studying my outfit, that's the dress from Nordstrom, isn't it? I thought Valeria had brought you better options. I felt comfortable in this one. Comfortable. She said the word like it tasted wrong. Well. David's parents are joining us tonight. The Stokers have very particular standards about presentation. Do try to make a good impression. Dinner was calculated humiliation disguised as family bonding. Clarence Stoker described his latest property acquisition with smugness. We're clearing out tenants in the Harbor District building. If they can't afford new rates, that's basic economics. The conversation shifted mercifully to wedding logistics. I sat in silence, pushing food around my plate, feeling Vince's hand still on my knee like a warning. After dinner, while others moved to the library for brandy, Selma pulled me aside in the hallway. Clarissa, I need to discuss something delicate with you. She guided me into her study, closing the door. Your performance tonight was concerning. These things reflect on Vince. On our entire family. I was just. That's the problem. You still don't understand that your opinions aren't private when you're married to a Dumont. Everything you say, everything you wear reflects on Vince's position and our family standing. She moved to her desk, pulling out a folder. Valeria tells me you refused most dresses she selected for the wedding. That you insisted on choosing your own. I wanted something that felt like me. That's exactly what I'm explaining. You is no longer separate. You are Vince's wife. Your personal preferences are secondary to the image we need to project. She opened the folder, revealing photographs of me at various events, each image circled and labeled with criticisms. My dress at the gala, discount rack. My shoes at the club, last season's style. My jewelry, sentimental but not impressive. I've been documenting these issues because I care about my son's future. Your inability to present yourself appropriately is becoming a liability. I stared at the photographs, evidence of systematic surveillance, proof I'd been evaluated this entire time. For the wedding, Selma continued, I've selected your outfit personally. Valeria will deliver it tomorrow. You will wear what I've chosen, dress, shoes, jewelry, everything. And if I don't? Her expression hardened. Then you'll force me to have a difficult conversation with Vince about whether this marriage serves his best interests. Whether someone from your background was ever suitable for his life. The threat hung in the air. What she didn't know was that I'd already documented her son's affair, his financial crimes, his deception. That her threat was hollow because I was already steps ahead. But I couldn't let her know. Not yet. I'll wear whatever you've selected, I said quietly. Good. Her smile returned. I knew you'd see reason. You really are quite trainable when you put your mind to it. In the car ride home, Vince was silent, his jaw tight. When we pulled into our garage, he finally spoke. You embarrassed me tonight. I expressed an opinion. His hand slammed the steering wheel. This is exactly the problem. You think this is about you. Your feelings, your opinions. But it's about us. About what we're building together. A life where I'm not allowed to have thoughts. A life where you're supposed to be grateful instead of difficult. Then maybe you should have married someone else. The words came out before I could stop them. Vince's face went cold. Maybe I should have. He got out and walked into the house without waiting. I sat in the garage for 10 minutes, feeling the weight of what was coming. 3 more days. 3 more days of performance. Then I would burn it all down. The morning of Denise's wedding arrived with unseasonable humidity that made everything feel oppressive. I woke at dawn to find Vince already gone, a note on his pillow, getting ready at the estate. See you at the venue. Wear what mother selected. The garment bag Valeria had delivered hung in our closet like a sentence. Inside was a beige dress, conservative to the point of invisibility, with a high neckline and 3/4 sleeves despite the August heat. The shoes were nude pumps, low-heeled and forgettable. The jewelry was pearls, small, modest, the kind that whispered, appropriate, rather than made any statement at all. I was meant to disappear into the background of Denise's wedding photographs, present but unremarkable, there but not actually seen. Instead, I put on the navy dress I'd originally chosen. The one that fit properly, that made me look like myself rather than a beige ghost of Selma's imagination. I fastened my grandmother's silver locket around my neck, letting it rest against my collarbone like armor. Then I transferred the $4,127 venue payment to my credit card, watching my available balance drop while I documented everything with screenshots and photographs of the venue contract that clearly showed this was a Dumont family event, not something I should be personally financing. The Rosewood estate looked like a fairy tale when I arrived, white roses everywhere, strings quartet playing Vivaldi, guests in designer attire drifting across manicured lawns. Valet attendants took my keys with practiced efficiency, and I walked through the entrance already feeling eyes assess my wrong dress, my wrong shoes, my wrong everything. Selma found me within minutes, her face going tight when she saw what I was wearing. I specifically selected your outfit. I know. I chose something different. Clarissa, the photographers are already here. The family portraits are in 20 minutes. You cannot be in photographs looking like that. Like myself? Her mouth opened and closed, searching for words that wouldn't sound as cruel as what she was thinking. Before she could find them, the wedding planner rushed over with a crisis about the florist delivery, pulling Selma away with apologetic efficiency. I found my assigned seat for the ceremony, 7th row, far enough back that I'd barely be visible in any photos. Around me, Dumont relatives and business associates filled the chairs in order of importance, a visual hierarchy of who mattered and who didn't. The ceremony was flawless. Denise looked stunning in her couture gown. David looked appropriately emotional. The vows were traditional, the music was perfect, and 200 guests watched the union of two wealthy families with approval. I sat in my 7th row seat and thought about the $4,127 charged to my personal credit card to make this moment possible. The reception began with golden light streaming through the ballroom's floor-to-ceiling windows. The space had been transformed with thousands of white roses, tables set with china that probably cost more per plate than most people's monthly groceries. An ice sculpture in the shape of interlocking hearts slowly melted near the bar. I found my assigned seat, table 17, near the service entrance to the kitchen, with Vince's distant relatives who couldn't quite remember my name. Spencer's girlfriend asked if I was one of the catering staff before someone corrected her in a mortified whisper. Vince sat at table 1 with his parents, the bride and groom, and the most important members of both families. I could see him clearly from where I sat, laughing at something Clarence said, his hand gesturing with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned whether he belonged. He hadn't looked for me once. The first course arrived, lobster bisque with microgreens and truffle oil. Around me, conversation flowed about vacation properties and which private schools were worth the tuition. I nodded and smiled, performing pleasant background presence while my mind catalogued every detail. Between the 2nd and 3rd courses, Selma stood to give her mother-of-the-bride speech. She looked radiant in rose silk, diamonds at her throat catching candlelight like small fires. "Family," she began, her voice carrying across the ballroom with practiced ease. "Today we celebrate not just the union of Denise and David, but the merging of two families who understand the value of legacy, of maintaining standards, of choosing partners who elevate rather than diminish what we've built." She went on about bloodlines, about the importance of marrying within your class, about how some people understand instinctively what others can never learn. Her eyes found me once across the room, holding my gaze just long enough to make her point crystal clear. "To those who truly belong," she concluded, raising her champagne glass. "To those who carry our standards forward with pride." The room erupted in applause. Vince stood, beaming, pulling his mother into an embrace while photographers captured the moment. Not once did he look toward table 17 to see if his wife was watching. That's when Clarence stood, already several drinks deep, his voice carrying with alcohol-fueled confidence. "Before we continue, I have to say what everyone's thinking. Vince, you've built an incredible life, the business, the properties, this beautiful family. But we all know you've done it despite certain obstacles. Certain choices that haven't made things easier." Scattered laughter rippled through the room. Someone near table 1 whispered something that made others smirk. "Your mother raised you right," Clarence continued. "Taught you about maintaining standards, about what matters in this world. Some of us understood that from birth. Others." He raised his glass toward my table, his meaning unmistakable. "Others need more extensive education." More laughter now, less scattered. Vince was shaking his head with fond exasperation, not quite disagreeing, not quite endorsing, just letting it happen. Spencer stood then, emboldened by the crowd's response. To Vince, who's generous enough to try to teach economics to someone whose entire annual income wouldn't cover this wedding's flower budget. The ballroom erupted in laughter. I sat frozen in my seat at table 17, watching 200 people laugh at a joke about my poverty, about my worthlessness, about how lucky I should be that Vince had condescended to marry me. Vince stood slowly, and for one brief moment I thought he might defend me. Might tell them to stop. Might remember he'd once loved me enough to propose. Instead, he raised his own glass. To everyone who understands that sometimes we make choices we think will work out, only to realize we were wrong. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the waitstaff seemed to freeze, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Vince stood at table 1, his glass still raised, having just publicly declared his marriage a mistake to 200 witnesses. I felt every eye in the ballroom turn toward me, some with pity, most with the satisfied curiosity of people watching someone else's humiliation unfold like entertainment. Then Vince turned to face me directly across the crowded room, his voice carrying with devastating clarity. "A woman from your background should be grateful my family even let you through the door." The words landed like physical blows. I heard gasps, nervous laughter, the rustle of people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Selma's hand flew to her mouth, but her eyes gleamed with something that looked like vindication. The maitre d' appeared at my table then, leather folder in hand. "Mrs. Dumont? The venue manager needs to speak with you about the final payment." Perfect timing. Orchestrated timing. I understood immediately, this was part of it, the final act of my public diminishment. Make me pay, make me handle the bill like staff, make everyone see exactly what I was worth to this family. "Of course," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I stood, my grandmother's locket catching the light, and walked through the silent ballroom toward Valeria's office. Behind me, I heard Vince's voice, slightly slurred now, "And that, everyone, is why you should always get an ironclad prenup." Lesson learned. More laughter. The party resuming. My humiliation becoming an anecdote they'd share at future gatherings. In Valeria's office, she closed the door and handed me the final bill with eyes full of sympathy. $4,127 for venue services, as discussed. I pulled out my credit card, not the joint account card Vince expected me to use, but my personal card, the one I'd been building in secret. I watched my available credit drop to nearly nothing as the charge processed. Valeria printed the receipt slowly, then did something unexpected. She printed a second copy and stapled her business card to it with her personal number already written on the back. "Security footage from today," she said quietly. "Audio and video of everything that happened in that ballroom. If you need it, it's yours. No charge." I looked at her, this venue manager who'd witnessed my destruction and was offering me a weapon. "Why?" "Because I've worked weddings for 15 years, and I've seen what your husband's family does to people. How they treat staff, how they talk about anyone they consider beneath them. What he just did to you." She shook her head. "That was cruelty. Calculated cruelty. And sometimes people need evidence of what was done to them." I took the business card with shaking hands. "Thank you. The footage is backed up on 3 servers. Time-stamped, authenticated, admissible in court if it comes to that. All you have to do is call." When I returned to the ballroom, I didn't go back to table 17. I walked straight to table 1, where Vince sat with his champagne and his family and his satisfied smile. "The bill is paid," I said clearly. $4,127. Charged to my personal account. Selma waved her hand dismissively. Yes, we'll reimburse you from the family account. Thank you for handling that. I'd like the reimbursement now, please." The table went quiet. Selma's smile froze. "Excuse me? I'd like the reimbursement now. $4,127. I can accept a check or a direct transfer." Vince stood, his face darkening. "Clarissa, don't make a scene. We'll handle this later. You just told 200 people I was a mistake. That I should be grateful your family lets me through the door. Now I'm asking for reimbursement for money I spent on your sister's wedding. That seems fair." Clarence laughed uncomfortably. "Vince, maybe you should take your wife outside." "She's not going anywhere until this is resolved," I interrupted. "I paid for this venue. Your venue. Your sister's wedding. I'd like my money back." Selma's expression shifted from confusion to rage. "How dare you? After everything this family has done for you, after the opportunities we've given you, after the patience we've shown with your unsuitable background." "Unsuitable background?" My voice was loud enough now that nearby tables had stopped their conversations to listen. My unsuitable background where my parents taught me that when you borrow money, you pay it back? That unsuitable background? Vince grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Outside. Now. I pulled away from him, stepping back so everyone could see. Don't touch me. Clarissa, I'm warning you. What? You'll humiliate me more? You already did that. In front of everyone. You called me a mistake. Said I should be grateful. Made jokes about my income. So what's left? What else can you possibly do? He stepped toward me, and I saw it then, the flash of real anger, the kind that makes men dangerous. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me in front of all these witnesses. Instead, he said quietly, voice shaking, "You're embarrassing yourself." Embarrassing me. Embarrassing my entire family. Good. The word came out clear and final. I'm done being invisible. Done being grateful. Done being the mistake you tell jokes about. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, through the French doors onto the terrace, my hands shaking so hard I could barely grip my purse. Behind me, I heard the eruption of voices, the chaos of whispered conversations, the sound of my marriage ending in real time. Vince followed me outside, slamming the terrace doors hard enough to rattle glass. What the hell was that? That was me asking for money I'm owed. You made me look like an idiot in front of everyone who matters. You made yourself look like an idiot. I just asked for reimbursement. His face was red now, veins visible at his temples. Get back in there. Apologize to my mother. Apologize to my family. Fix this. No. The single word hung between us like a chasm opening. What did you say? I said no. I'm not apologizing. I'm not going back in there. I'm done, Vince. With all of it. With you, with your family, with pretending I should be grateful for being treated like I'm worthless. He stared at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't understand. Then he pulled out his phone and started typing furiously. What are you doing? Calling a car. You're going home. And tomorrow, you and I are going to have a very serious conversation about your future in this family. There is no future. We're done. He looked up from his phone, something like fear crossing his face. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean that. Clarissa, listen to me. You're upset. You're emotional. But if you walk away from this marriage, you get nothing. The prenup is airtight. You signed it. You'll leave with exactly what you came with, nothing. I smiled then, and watched confusion replace the fear in his eyes. We'll see about that. I didn't go home that night. I drove straight to my sister Monique's house, still in my navy dress. She opened the door before I could knock, pulling me inside. I saw his texts. 23 messages calling you unstable. All bullshit. He told 200 people I was a mistake. I know. Valeria called me, she's in my professional network. She said you were incredible. I started shaking, adrenaline catching up. I charged $4,127 to my personal card for his sister's wedding. Monique wrapped a blanket around me. Good. Now we have documentation of financial abuse. Did you get a receipt? Valeria gave me copies. And she has security footage of everything in the ballroom. Audio and video. Even better. Monique typed on her phone. Denise Stoker is on her way. She said it's time to build the case. Denise arrived 40 minutes later with her laptop and 2 file boxes. She set up at Monique's dining table with methodical precision. Show me everything. I pulled out my phone, opening folders I'd been building for months. Photographs of receipts, bank statements, emails from Vince's laptop. Hundreds of images documenting betrayal. Denise worked through them, her expression darkening. She built spreadsheets, created timelines, connected patterns. Look at this, she said after an hour. These hotel charges at the Grandview match these jewelry purchases. Same dates, always the 15th. He's celebrating something monthly. An anniversary? Or a birthday? Something significant enough for expensive gifts and luxury stays. She pulled up another document. $3,500 transferred monthly to an account in someone else's name. Valeria Chen. Age 28. Works in marketing at Dumont Properties. Started 14 months ago, right when transfers began. She showed me social media profiles, a young woman with burgundy lipstick, posting photos from restaurants I recognized, wearing jewelry matching Vince's credit card charges. He's been supporting her for over a year. $3,500 monthly plus gifts, dinners, hotels. About $8,000 per month total. Monique leaned over. That's more than twice what Clarissa makes annually. And here's where it gets criminal. Denise pulled up more files. Look at these transfers from client accounts. Small amounts, $500 here, $800 there, moved through shell companies. He's been skimming. How much total? Conservative estimate? $340,000 over 2 years. I stared at the numbers, thinking about Vince's speeches about ethics while he'd been embezzling hundreds of thousands. Denise organized everything into categories: financial crimes, adultery evidence, emotional abuse documentation. Each folder color-coded, cross-referenced, time-stamped. She created a master timeline showing how everything connected. The prenup has a morality clause, I said. Adultery, financial impropriety, or public disgrace voids it. Denise smiled grimly. You can prove all three. The affair is documented. The embezzlement is traceable. And as of tonight, you have video of him publicly humiliating you. That's disgrace on camera. Monique's phone buzzed. Vince is at my house. He's banging on the door. We could hear him, fist pounding, voice muffled but angry. Monique. I know she's in there. Tell my wife to come out. Denise started packing with speed. Do not open that door. This is harassment and we're documenting it. Monique positioned her phone to record through the window. We watched Vince on her porch, tie loosened, hair disheveled, face red. Clarissa. Stop being ridiculous. You embarrassed me. Explain yourself. Should I call the police? Monique asked. Not yet, Denise said. Let him wear himself out. This footage shows his state of mind. It's useful. Vince pounded for 5 more minutes before giving up. We watched him stagger to his Mercedes, nearly backing into the mailbox before speeding away. He's drunk, Monique observed. Drunk and dangerous. Denise nodded, adding notes. Documented. If he tries to claim you're unstable, we show this video. My phone buzzed with texts, from Vince, Selma, Spencer, even David. All saying I'd ruined the wedding, embarrassed the family, shown my true colors. Don't respond, Denise instructed. Every text is evidence of harassment. She pulled out a legal pad. We need to contact Valeria with the security footage. Your colleague who introduced us. Anyone who's witnessed Vince's treatment. Over 3 hours, we built a comprehensive case. Financial crimes with bank records. Adultery with receipts and emails. Emotional abuse with texts and video footage. This isn't just strong enough to void your prenup, Denise said finally. This destroys him completely. Criminal charges. Professional ruin. Social disgrace. The family who mocked you tonight will turn on him when they understand what he's done. What do I do next? Monday morning, we file simultaneously, divorce papers with asset freeze, a report to the state bar about embezzlement, and a restraining order if harassment continues. We hit him from every angle before he can hide evidence. Monique sat beside me. You can stay here as long as you need. I've already told the hospital I'm taking personal leave. After Denise left, I sat in Monique's guest room looking at angry messages from the Dumont family. Vince's final text: "You're going to regret this." I thought about the morality clause, about $340,000 in embezzled funds, about security footage of my humiliation. "No," I texted back. "You are." Then I blocked his number and slept for the first time in months without wondering what I'd done wrong. Sunday morning arrived with rain. I woke to a text from Denise Stoker: "Ready to start building your coalition?" The first call was to Valeria Eigenman, the venue manager. "Mrs. Dumont. I was hoping you'd reach out." "Just Clarissa. You mentioned security footage?" "Every angle. The speeches, the confrontation, your husband's statements. Already copied and stored on 3 servers. Time-stamped, authenticated, admissible. Why are you helping me?" A pause. 5 years ago, the Dumont family hosted a gala at our venue. A server accidentally spilled wine on Selma's dress. Selma made such a scene our manager fired her on the spot. She was a single mother who couldn't find work after being fired from such a prestigious venue. I've always regretted not standing up for her. I'm standing up now. The footage is yours. The next call was harder. Margaret Parker, Clarence's ex-wife who'd lost custody 3 years ago. According to Denise's research, Clarence had painted her as mentally unstable using the same legal team the Dumont family employed. "My name is Clarissa. I'm married to Vince Dumont. Or I was. I think he used similar tactics against you, making you seem irrational, unstable." Silence. Then, "How did you know?" "Because they tried it with me." "What if you could prove Clarence has been embezzling from the family business? Would that change custody?" "Do you have proof?" $340,000 worth. Bank transfers, shell companies. If Clarence was involved, that's grounds to revisit custody. Her breath caught. "Send me everything." By afternoon, we had 5 potential witnesses: Valeria with footage, Margaret with legal standing for custody revision, Catherine Dumont with decade-old fraud evidence, plus 2 former employees who'd been fired after questioning accounting practices. That evening, a psychiatrist friend of Monique's came by, Dr. David Eigenman, who specialized in divorce testimony. "Your sister asked me to evaluate whether you'd benefit from professional assessment. In high-conflict divorces where one party claims the other is unstable, documentation helps." We talked for 2 hours about the systematic humiliation, the gaslighting, the way I'd been trained to question my own perceptions. "What you've described is classic psychological manipulation," he said finally. "The fact that you recognized it and documented evidence shows intact judgment and appropriate self-protection. You're not unstable, you're responding rationally to sustained emotional abuse. Can you put that in writing? I can provide a professional assessment confirming you demonstrate no signs of instability. Your methodical evidence gathering shows excellent judgment." After he left, Denise packed up her files. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the courthouse. We file divorce papers with asset freeze, report embezzlement to the Attorney General, and file a restraining order based on his harassment. All at once. What will happen to him? Accounts frozen. Served with papers at work. By noon, everyone in his circle will know. By evening, his partners will be distancing themselves. Within a week, criminal investigators will be calling." I thought about Vince's face when he'd called me a mistake, about his certainty that the prenup would protect him, about his belief that I'd always be too grateful or too scared to fight back. "Good," I said. "Let it burn down." Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed in my most professional outfit, a gray suit I'd bought for grant presentations, paired with my grandmother's silver locket. Denise picked me up at 8:30, her car loaded with file boxes and her laptop bag. "Ready?" she asked. I'd been ready for months. The courthouse opened at 9 a.m. sharp. We were first in line at the family court clerk's office, presenting a stack of documents Denise had prepared over the weekend. Divorce petition. Request for emergency asset freeze based on evidence of financial crimes. Detailed accounting of marital assets and separate property. The clerk processed everything with efficient neutrality, stamping each page with the kind of finality that felt like freedom. Your husband will be served within 24 hours. The asset freeze is effective immediately pending the judge's review. From the courthouse, we drove directly to the state attorney general's office. Denise had scheduled an appointment with a prosecutor who specialized in financial crimes. We sat in a sterile conference room while she reviewed the evidence, bank statements showing the embezzlement pattern, emails from Vince's laptop discussing transfers, documentation of shell companies used to hide stolen funds. This is substantial, she said after 30 minutes. We'll open a formal investigation immediately. I'll need to interview the witnesses you've listed, subpoena business records from Dumont Properties, and coordinate with federal authorities if this crosses state lines. How long before charges are filed? These cases take time, usually 6 to 12 months for white-collar crimes. But the investigation itself will be public knowledge within days. His business partners will know, his clients will know, everyone in his professional circle will know he's under criminal investigation. By 11 a.m., we were back at Denise's office, monitoring Vince's response. It came at 11:47 in the form of 23 phone calls in rapid succession, to my block number, to Monique's phone, to my office voicemail. Each message escalating from confusion to anger to something approaching panic. Clarissa, what did you do? My accounts are frozen. I can't access anything. Call me immediately. This is insane. You've lost your mind. I'm calling my lawyer and we're going to destroy you in court. The Attorney General's office just called. They're asking about business accounts. What did you tell them? What did you tell them? By the final message, his voice had cracked entirely. Please. Just call me back. We can fix this. Whatever you think I did, we can talk about it. Please. Denise played them back on speaker, documenting each one. Desperation. He's realizing the prenup won't save him if he's under criminal investigation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Selma. What you're doing to my son is unconscionable. We will fight this with every resource we have. You will regret crossing this family. I showed it to Denise. She smiled grimly. Threatening messages from his mother. That'll look great when we argue he's been using family resources to harass you. At 2:15 p.m., Vince was served with divorce papers at Dumont Properties. According to Catherine, who was still in contact with former employees, 2 police officers walked into the main office and handed him the documents in front of his business partners and half the staff. His response came 30 minutes later, an email to my old address that forwarded to my new secure account. You've made the biggest mistake of your life. My family has lawyers who will eviscerate you. You'll be lucky to leave this marriage with the clothes on your back. And everyone will know what you really are, a vindictive, unstable woman who couldn't handle being married to someone successful. Denise forwarded it to my lawyer with the subject line, Exhibit 47, Continued Harassment and Threats. By 4 p.m., the news had spread through their social circle. My phone started receiving texts from people I barely knew, acquaintances from country club events, distant relatives of Vince's, former friends who'd watched me shrink over 18 months and done nothing. Some were supportive. I always thought he treated you terribly. Good for you for leaving. Most were accusatory. How could you do this to Vince? After everything his family did for you? One message stood out, from David Stoker, Denise's new husband. I witnessed what happened at our wedding. If you need someone to testify about Vince's behavior, I will. What he did to you was wrong. That evening, the local business journal published a brief article, Dumont Properties partner under investigation for financial irregularities. It didn't name Vince specifically, but everyone in their world would know exactly who it meant. Monique showed me the article while making dinner. It's starting. The fall. How long do you think before? My phone rang. Clarence Stoker's name flashed on the screen. I answered on speaker so Denise and Monique could hear. Clarissa. His voice was tight, controlled. I think we need to have a conversation. About Vince, about the business, about certain accusations that have been made. I'm listening. What would it take for you to withdraw your complaint to the Attorney General? To handle this divorce quietly, privately, without destroying my business partner's career? The truth. Silence. Then, the truth about what? About whether you knew he was stealing from clients. Whether you helped him hide it. Whether the entire partnership has been profiting from fraud. I had no knowledge of any improprieties. Then you have nothing to worry about. The investigation will clear you. Clarissa, please. Be reasonable. Vince made mistakes, I'm not denying that. His treatment of you was inappropriate. But destroying his entire life over a marriage that didn't work out. He destroyed his own life. I'm just making sure everyone sees what he did. Clarence's voice hardened. You're making a powerful enemy. The Dumont family doesn't forgive. They don't forget. Good. Because neither do I. I hung up, my hands shaking but my voice steady. Denise was already typing notes. That call confirms they're panicking. Clarence wouldn't reach out unless he was worried about his own exposure. That night, sleeping in Monique's guest room, I dreamed of the wedding, of standing in that ballroom while 200 people laughed at jokes about my poverty. But in the dream, I wasn't silent. I was speaking, and everyone was finally listening. You're absolutely right, I apologize for the error. I continued ACT 11 when it should have transitioned to ACT 12. Let me provide the correct ACT 12 now. The settlement negotiations collapsed after 2 weeks of back and forth. Vince's lawyer kept lowering their offers as more evidence surfaced. $150,000 became $100,000, then $75,000, each reduction accompanied by increasingly desperate justifications about limited liquid assets and frozen accounts pending investigation. My lawyer finally told them we'd see them in court. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late September. I wore the same navy dress from Denise's wedding, my grandmother's locket resting against my collarbone. Vince sat across the courtroom with his attorney, looking diminished in a suit that no longer fit quite right, his face drawn from stress and legal bills. The judge reviewed our evidence methodically, bank statements showing the affair spending, emails documenting embezzlement, security footage from the wedding reception showing Vince's public humiliation of me, character testimony from 5 witnesses about systematic emotional abuse. Vince's attorney tried to argue that I'd obtained evidence illegally, that the prenup was still valid, that I was exaggerating normal marital difficulties for financial gain. But every argument crumbled under the weight of documentation we'd assembled. The judge's ruling was swift and comprehensive. The prenuptial agreement was void due to Vince's conduct violating the morality clause. I was awarded $850,000 in equitable distribution, plus $4,000 monthly spousal support for 7 years. The house Selma had purchased was sold, with proceeds split between us. Vince was ordered to reimburse me immediately for the $4,127 wedding venue payment. Additionally, the judge said, looking directly at Vince, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. The financial irregularities presented in this case appear to constitute fraud and embezzlement. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not victorious, divorce doesn't have winners. But free. 3 months later, I stood in the doorway of my new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in my old neighborhood, blocks from where I grew up. The furniture was secondhand, the kitchen had linoleum floors instead of marble, and the coffee maker was a simple drip machine that cost $30. It was perfect. Monique helped me unpack boxes, hanging my grandmother's locket on a hook by the door where I'd see it every day. How does it feel? Like coming home. My grant writing business had grown steadily once I stopped hiding it to protect Vince's ego. I'd taken on 2 new nonprofit clients and hired a part-time assistant. The work paid enough to cover my modest rent and simple lifestyle, with the settlement money safely invested for long-term security. Vince had been formally charged with embezzlement and wire fraud. His trial was scheduled for next spring. Clarence had negotiated immunity by testifying against him, confirming that Vince had acted alone and hidden his theft from the partnership. Dumont Properties had restructured, removing the Dumont name entirely, trying to distance itself from the scandal. Selma had stopped calling after the third month. The last time I saw her was at a coffee shop downtown. She walked in, saw me, and walked right back out. The woman who'd once cataloged my inadequacies couldn't bear to occupy the same space as the daughter-in-law who'd destroyed her son's carefully constructed image. One Saturday afternoon, I returned to Chateau Blanc, the same restaurant where Vince had humiliated me at Denise's wedding reception. Valeria Eigenman, the venue manager, had invited me for lunch. "Mrs. Parker," she greeted me, using my maiden name with deliberate respect. "Welcome back." The maitre d' seated us at a table by the windows, the same section where I'd sat invisible at table 17. But this time, I sat with clear sight lines to the entrance, to the ballroom, to everything. "I wanted you to know," Valeria said, "that Vince Dumont contacted us trying to book the venue for a business event. We declined. He's permanently banned from this establishment." "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, we did. What happened here was unconscionable. We have standards about how people treat each other, regardless of their bank accounts." Over lunch, she told me about the 3 servers who'd threatened to quit after witnessing my humiliation, about the owner who'd reviewed the footage personally and made the banning decision himself, about the small ways the staff had been rooting for me even when I couldn't see it. "You weren't invisible that night," she said. "We all saw you. We all saw what he did. And we all wanted you to know you deserved better." For months after the divorce finalized, I was invited to speak at a nonprofit conference about grant writing strategies. The audience was small, maybe 50 people, but they listened attentively while I shared techniques for crafting compelling proposals. During the Q&A, someone asked how I'd built my business while managing other life challenges. I hesitated, then decided to tell the truth. I was married to someone who considered my work a hobby, who told me that what I did didn't matter because it didn't generate impressive income or prestigious titles. I almost believed him. Almost let him convince me that helping nonprofits secure funding was less valuable than whatever he did in his corner office. The room was silent, attentive. But I was wrong to doubt myself. This work, helping organizations serve their communities, writing proposals that fund programs for people who need them, this matters. It's always mattered. I just had to stop letting someone else define what success looks like. The applause was modest but genuine. After the session, 3 people approached asking if I had availability for new clients. By the end of the conference, I'd signed contracts for $75,000 worth of grant writing work. On what would have been our 4th wedding anniversary, I drove to my parents' house for dinner. My father was grilling in the backyard, my mother was making potato salad in that same kitchen where I'd learned to cook. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, nothing that would photograph well for Architectural Digest. My younger brother was there with his family, his kids running through the sprinkler while he tried to supervise and fail spectacularly. My sister Monique arrived with her husband, carrying a store-bought cake because she'd been working double shifts at the hospital. We ate at a picnic table with mismatched chairs. My father said grace, thanking God for family and health and second chances. My mother passed around potato salad in a Tupperware container that was probably older than I was. This was wealth. This was what mattered. Not marble countertops or imported coffee beans or being seen at the right restaurants by the right people. Just family who loved you even when you made mistakes, who showed up when you needed them, who measured success by whether you were happy rather than whether you were impressive. My niece, Monique's daughter, came over and tugged on my sleeve. "Aunt Clarissa, Mom says you got divorced. Does that mean you're sad?" I thought about it honestly. "No, sweetie. It means I'm free." Free to do what? Free to be myself. She considered this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult concepts. "Good. I like you being yourself. You're more fun now than you were before." Out of the mouths of children, truth spoken without filter. I had been less fun, less myself, less alive during those 18 months of trying to be someone worthy of the Dumont name. That evening, driving home through my old neighborhood, I passed the elementary school where I'd once dreamed of teaching. On impulse, I pulled into the parking lot and sat watching kids play on the playground equipment through the chain-link fence. Teaching had been my first dream, before grant writing, before Vince, before I'd learned that dreams sometimes have to evolve. Maybe someday I'd return to that original calling. Or maybe I'd keep writing proposals that funded programs for kids like the ones playing tag near the swing set. Either way, it would be my choice. Not dictated by someone else's expectations or limited by someone else's definitions of what work was valuable. My phone buzzed with a text from Denise Stoker. How are you doing today? Good. Really good. Thank you for everything. You did the hard work. I just helped you see what you already knew. I drove to my modest apartment, climbed the stairs to the second floor, and unlocked the door to my simple, perfect, entirely my own space. No marble counters. No imported anything. No one to judge whether I was good enough or grateful enough or impressive enough. Just me. Clarissa Parker. Grant writer. Sister. Daughter. Survivor. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.